When we start talking about having coffee and conversation with this one and that one, it's not really Beach Haven Neighborhood Watch. It's much, much larger than that. And so what's your story?
I came down here from Jacksonville. My mama was born and raised here.
You're wearing a cross. What does that mean to you?
My Father in heaven, I believe He helped me with everything else, everything I need. He helped me with my problem. You know?
Do you ever feel like He's not meeting your needs since you're on the street?
No. He always meets my needs. No matter what goes on, my Father in heaven, He always with me. Because at His time, He don't never give you what you want, He give you what you need. He always meets my needs.
Building meaningful community is an idea that emerged, that is in my life, that is back in the 70s. It's a construct. It's something that you can work with. It's about turning to each other, not against each other. It's about taking a functional approach. It's about moving forward. It's about keeping in step, that is, with things in real time, such as science, etc. And so that's why we are attempting to get the best explanations, that is, of the facts, the best explanations, namely of the data. I mean, that would be nice, right? We want the best explanations of what's really going on in people's lives and who they are, right? We want to get along. We want to see goodness be the best it ever could be, that is, in our lives and others.
Life is very short, and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend.
The other night when I was asked at a neighborhood watch to talk about the school grades, especially what happened at Warrington, there's a lot of things that came together, and the demise of Warrington as a public school at this moment started back 8 years ago when they got their first D. Because what happened was students started to choice out. Families removed their kids from Warrington Middle School. Rather than having students who really are more academically competent stay at that school, they choiced out. They went to others. What's happened, and the culmination of it, the last school year, 735 students choiced out of Warrington Middle School. If those students had still been in there and been part of that averaging of that score, part of that coming together of it, they would have not been a D. They could have actually been a high C or even a B when you look at the students who left. Now, the thing that's in the grading system and what happens, there are kids who leave the school, and we're going to talk again, Warrington Middle School. Warrington had 50-some kids who were removed for behavior reasons and sent to an alternative site. And when they go to the alternative site, they're focusing on behavior. They're helping with academics, but they're not doing the same things going to happen every day academically as it would have had they attended Warrington Middle. But at the end of the year, those students' scores went back to be averaged in to the students who were still at Warrington Middle School. That's what they call a tieback. The state did that to try to keep districts from playing a game where they would take the kids who were either underperforming or misbehaving and put them all in alternative, thinking they wouldn't count for any of the scores at that school. So they had this tie back. What I've said was, Why aren't they tying back the students who choiced out? Why not take and get the scores from that 735, put them back into the mix at Warrington Middle School? Because like the ones who went to the alternative site, they didn't get the instruction at that school, but they got instruction. Let that count for Warrington Middle. That's not going to happen. The state's not going to hear of it. The other things that occurred, other than that big exodus of more capable academic students being away from that school, is there was a turnover. In the last 5 years, they've had 3 principals. When there's a leadership change, even the people on the State Board of Education have said it takes at least 2 years for things to stabilize and for the faculty to see the mission, the vision, and to see what the plan is and work into it and be able to implement it. Well, none of those principals were really given 2 years. They had a year and a half tops. So that was another thing. Last school year, 80% of the academic teachers, the teachers in the math, English language arts, and science, had to be replaced. The state said they wouldn't let any of the teachers who were there previously in those positions stay unless they had a VAM score that met a certain number that the state decided. VAM is a value-added model based upon student performance that the teachers taught years before that. Needless to say, having the D's, those teachers' scores were not there, so they would be kept. So 80% of that faculty was new. There was no connection between the students and the faculty. Some of them left early even after they transferred in because they got a huge amount of money to do that. But the ones who did stay worked tirelessly to make this happen. The other thing that happened is there had been what they called an external operator at Warrington Middle School. The Florida Department of Education and the State Board of Education required all of these things. They've had control of that school for the last 8 years. Prior to last year, it had been Rensselaer Institute, which is a recognized company that does this outside operator. They come in, they bring experts, they do training for the teachers, they do observations, they make recommendations and work with it. Well, last year, the Florida State Board of Education said, you have to change the external operator. And we did. We went with Learning Systems Incorporated as they required. Before the school year started, the lead person for LSI got sick and left. They struggled to find somebody to bring in to take over. There were more obstacles put in the place of Warrington Middle than people understand or want to recognize. And they came close. They came within probably 3 or 4 points of making a C, but it was low in the reading, English language arts. All right. They had one of the highest scores in the district with algebra at Warrington Middle last year. Again, that just gets averaged in, so it really didn't make that big of a change. But what I'm trying to say is everything that could be done was being done. The Florida Department of Education, the State Board of Education, and the Escambia County School Board put every resource that we could into that school. We put additional deans, additional administrative people, additional coaches, academic coaches for English language arts, reading, science, and math. But again, it was hard to find people who you could get on a moment's notice, and then COVID threw another wrinkle. At one point, there was at least 15 teachers out for a 10-day period with COVID. We didn't have subs. So last year was kind of a calamity, not just in Escambia County, not just at Warrington Middle School, but statewide and nationwide. We didn't have enough subs to operate and go on a day-to-day basis. So students were being moved into other classrooms. They were getting everything they could as best that they could. Somebody wants to blame the state, the Escambia County School Board for failure. They're wrong. they could go back, they could witness the things that we did in those meetings and go on from there. But the worst part about it is this, okay? At a time when we need to recognize how hard the administration and the faculty at Warrington worked to make things happen, people are tearing it down. They just have all this negative. They want to keep slinging mud. They want to keep saying, somebody's fault, somebody's fault. This isn't one person or one organization's fault. This is a problem that's systemic in our community. We have people who struggle, families who struggle to have food on the table and provide the resources to students. So they're not there to be able to help with the academics either. We get students who are coming to us who are less prepared than others, but we're still doing everything we can to help them. Now, one of the examples to say that we are doing a good job, even with our students who are behind and lagging, is Dr. Ronald Ferguson was brought into Pensacola Civicon. If you're familiar with Civicon, these are programs that are put on through the Studer Institute, and they come in to look at the community. Dr. Ferguson came in to talk about school improvement and to talk about the accountability system. And I went to that and I listened to Dr. Ferguson. Like I said, he's a Harvard researcher. And he came in and everybody had the feeling that he was going to come in and say all of this negative stuff about the Escambia County School District. What he did was remarkable, and there were people who kind of looked shocked when he said the Escambia County School District does a better job than the neighboring counties. And they said, well, how could that be? He said, well, the Escambia County kids come in at this level, the neighboring districts come in at this level, but by the end of elementary school, they're equal. He said his research shows that the Escambia County School District does a better job of teaching, learning, and making gains than neighboring school districts. So I will rest kind of some of the stuff with that, and you could go back and look at the things that Dr. Ferguson said at Civicon, because I think they are taped and recorded. Well, we are a B school district. Having a B isn't something that happens if you're a failing school district. You would be a D, an F, C at best, but we are a B. We have kids who are superior, and so instead of tearing down what's happening in the Escambia County schools and trying to use it as a tool to sling mud at somebody, you need to be looking at what's happening that's good and what we need to emulate everywhere. The Escambia County School District should be recognized, should be applauded by the people in the community for the things that we do. We have the B school district, but we have an international baccalaureate program. We serve kids in that program and they excel beyond belief. But we do that in every high school. We have advanced placement and dual enrollment. In fact, this coming school year, Escambia High School will have dual enrollment at Escambia High, because in order for the students on the west side to do those dual enrollment classes, they have to either go to PSC or to UWF. If they do that, they have to take at least 2 hours out of their day just in travel to be able to afford those classes. That also keeps them from being able to participate in athletics or extracurriculars or in other enrichment programs like band. Speaking of band, our district every year does an all-county band, all-county orchestra. One of the conductors who came last year from Nashville, Tennessee, came down here, and in the middle of the concert, when they take the break between songs, between music, said to everyone in the audience, this community needs to be proud of what's happening in the band and music programs, the fine arts in Escambia County. She says, I work in Nashville. Nashville is Music City. She says, and we don't have the same level of involvement and support that Escambia County does. She says between Nashville and Orlando, Escambia County is known, renowned for what we do. We have strings program that start an elementary program and go through middle and high school. We have the other band programs, the brass and percussion and stuff, that starts in middle school and goes through high school. We win awards at all the music competitions. We win awards in the arts competitions. Our academic team in Escambia County has been either number 1 or number 2 for the last 22 years when we compete with the other districts in the state of Florida. And that's going against Miami-Dade County, which has 500,000 students. So we do a great job, and we do it well. Students who come more prepared to school are a real blessing. We have the largest FFA, the Future Farmers of America, the largest FFA program in the state of Florida is at Tate High School. But we also have a big FFA at Northview High School and at Beulah Middle School that feeds into those. These are renowned programs. They win awards, they get in state competitions and go on to do wonderful things in agriculture and in farming. We have magnet programs, West Florida High School, which is a magnet for career academies. It started out to be a program that was going to be mainly high-tech, high-level career instruction. We had Cox Communications as part of it, Gulf Power was part of it, but we had other engineering and other things that went into it. And the first premise was that students would go and they would be college ready or career ready when they left. It has evolved to be more of a ready to go into high level post high school classes, mainly at the colleges, but there are kids who come out and they have the ability, because of the certifications they've earned in the career academies at West Florida, to get a high-paying job and pursue college in any time frame that they want. But West Florida is not the only source of our career academies. Every one of our secondary schools, middle school and high school, have career academies. There are 73 in total in Escambia County. They range from culinary arts, pre-pharmacy, engineering, metal for flight, for aircraft maintenance and instruction with that. We have the fire academy to do the firefighters, EMT, nursing, you name it. It's there. There's 73 different ones, and the students can choose which ones they want to. They can choice out of whatever school they're zoned to the other, but that's with their own transportation. The only ones that we provide any kind of transportation are the 3 magnets: West Florida, Brown Barge Middle School, and N.B. Cook Elementary School of the Arts. Those do get trunk routing and other transportation. But that's not possible to do district-wide. There aren't enough buses or drivers in the state to be able to fulfill that, nor is there the funds to pay for it. So if a student choices to another school that's not a magnet, they do have to provide their own transportation. But there are good offerings in every school, so they don't have to choice out. I'm going down that when you look at Escambia County's top 25% rather than the lower 25%, we outperform Santa Rosa and Okaloosa. Our evaluation services department has run those numbers for a number of years, dating back to 2006 when Malcolm Thomas was the director of evaluation services, and he started doing that. We excel in other things too. We have the academics, as I said, athletics. We have schools that go every year to the playoffs in football, basketball, and baseball, and they do well. It's hard for us to compete against some of the mega schools in the South, and this year will be different because the Florida High Schools Activity Association has changed and recalibrated who's going to play who and to make it a more fair playoff system. But it's not just in the academics, the athletics, but it's also in things that needs to be recognized too, that for the last 2 years, Escambia High School was recognized by the Florida High School Athletic Association and given sportsmanship awards for the best sportsmanship in the state at their level. And that's never said, never talked about, never looked at. People want to always focus on the negative, and that's not a good thing. But our PE programs are been recognized by the state. We have a program called First Tee, which is trying to get our elementary kids into golf and get it going and give them other recreational things. We have water safety programs that are joint efforts between private business partners and the school district. Last year at Pensacola High School, there was $14 million in scholarships earned. That was partly the IB, mostly the IB program, but also the regular programs. And every other one of our high schools has between $2 and $4 million in scholarships every year. Our graduation rate at last year was 87%. Now that's remarkable, because to do that, any student who's held back 1 year is automatically listed as off that graduation rate, because they didn't graduate with their cohort, the group that they entered with at kindergarten. So to get to that level has been monumental and very good. As a failing school district, that couldn't happen. I talked about the dual enrollment with PSC and UWF and how we're going to have that at Escambia High, so the kids on the west side can have access to those advanced level courses. Escambia County schools, the school districts, 65% of our students are at high risk because of poverty level. At some of our schools, Warrington Middle, Oakcrest, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, Weiss, others, the poverty rate in those schools is about 99%. And so when you look at 65% district-wide, but pockets of poverty as high as 99 and 100%, that's pretty hard to deal with. Our neighboring counties, Santa Rosa is at 24 and Okaloosa at 17%. So the challenges that we have, they don't face. With the poverty comes students who really struggle to come to school on time, to come to school prepared, haven't had exposure to the early learning things that go on. Now we have good pre-K programs, and we expand those and we do everything, but the parents many times don't avail themselves of these programs. Again, it may be because the parents don't know about it, although with the Navigator program, which is a social services program we've put into the schools, we're sending trained social workers to work with the parents of the highest needs, helping them with finances, helping them with teaching their kids themselves, getting them into trainings, getting them medical services, getting them other social services. The program's been very successful, and it will continue. And we're going to continue. Those things will be ramped up as they're needed. The thing about it is everything costs money, so you can't do 100% everywhere. The places of the highest need are the ones who are getting it. That goes back to even the funding. A lot of people say, well, why aren't we giving more money to the schools that have this, and we do. It's Title I federal dollars. Title I is meant to take care of low-income families and students. And so there is a hierarchy depending upon the number of students, the percentage of students in a school, how much money they get in addition. So they do get extra tutoring. They get things after school. They have it on weekends. We have extra tutors and people who work, like I said, the academic coaches for reading, language arts, and math, who are in the schools pulling kids out and doing those things. But you have to be able to get them early enough, and you have to have students who want to do it. A lot of times the kids who are coming and who are living in the conditions that we all know about but we haven't lived in are struggling themselves to be able to focus on school when there's so many issues in the community and at home that it's keeping them preoccupied with the things that they shouldn't, as a child, need to be worried about. They shouldn't have to worry about where their next meal's coming from, or about clothing or other things, or about violence in the community. But those are the realities that we deal with. When we work with those kids and we take care of them, we counsel with them, we do interventions in the school. We're providing as much as humanly possible at this point. And people who say that we're not doing enough have never been in the schools. They've never volunteered, they've never mentored, they don't take part in the programs that are going on in the schools, and they're saying things that they're surmising, not things that are factual and true. You want to find out what's happening in the schools, sign up to be a mentor or a volunteer, even if it's just for a short time, to get a real feel to know what are some of the obstacles that our people have to deal with. You get in there, you'll understand, and you'll start saying, God, we've got great people working in these schools. They have insurmountable tasks that they face every day, and they do it willingly and happily because they love these kids. And so, let's stop beating people up. Let's stop slinging mud at stuff, and let's start doing the things that need to do to make that happen, instead of just sitting back like a Monday morning quarterback saying, oh, that's wrong, that's wrong. At one point I had told a lady I worked with, I says, I don't want to be a reactor. I want to be a first responder in the schools. A first responder is somebody who is trained, knows what they're doing, knows what the mission is, and has the resources and abilities to do that. A reactor says, oh, there's a fire, but a first responder is ready to put the fire out. And that's what I want to be. That's the skills that I have, and working in the schools is the things that I bring to that. The number of years that I've worked, and primarily in special needs. I worked with handicapped kids the majority of my career, and I've seen kids who struggle make it. Now, they're not going to make it to be a valedictorian, but they're going to be able to do the things that make them proud of what they can do, their accomplishments, and we're going to get them to the levels that they can reasonably reach, and maybe even further. I want to go back to the grading, and I wanted to make some comments about what's happening in District 2 as a whole. Okay, Warrington Middle has been the starting point, and people have talked about that. And then there's been some disparaging remarks about District 2 as a whole. And the reality of it is this: there's misinformation out there, even on signs, talking about the 10 failing schools in District 2. Well, there are only 9 schools in District 2, and 8 of them are the regular public schools, and 1 is a charter preschool for handicapped kids, and it doesn't get graded. But the 8 schools that are left, 2 of them were a B, that was Pleasant Grove and Navy Point. And Navy Point isn't an affluent area, but they had a B, even with the COVID, absenteeism, the tardiness because the buses didn't have enough bus drivers, all those things. Okay, there were 3 C's, West Pensacola, in spite of everything. Escambia High School and Warrington Elementary School was a C. Okay, the 2 D's, the 3 D's actually, was Warrington Middle, and because it was recurring is why the state's taking this action. The other 2 was Myrtle Grove and Sherwood Elementary. Those 2 elementary schools had some of the highest absenteeism among staff because of COVID in the district. That again is not indicative of what their scores have been in the past. They've been very good foundational schools. And the ones that feed in to Warrington Middle School. But those kids, again, the 735 that choiced out is what caused that program. But I hate it that there's people trying to beat up on the whole District 2, saying that it's a failing district. Again, there were 3 D's, but there were 3 C's and 2 B's. And you know, it just is, it's not honest. It's not truthful. I want to tell the truth. I don't take any pride or happiness that we do have a school that makes a D. I want us to work harder and do things differently. I've seen in the past that we have programs that can help, that could really help the teachers, the students, and the families come together. But it takes all of them. It can't be just the teachers. It can't be just the school. It can't be just the families. It can't be just, one section, the students. It's going to take all three working together. We have done it. We've shown success. When we look at what's happening again at all the schools in District 2 and not focus on one school and try to cast dispersions on the whole community based on that. Now, there's things that need to happen, things that need to change. There are plans in place. The good news is that as of today, we're only 3 bus drivers short for this coming school year. All right? We were 100 down last year. So transportation and getting students to school on time so they don't miss the critical instructional period at the beginning of the school day. Okay, that's vital. That's very important. And we need the support that if there is a late bus, that the parent bring the child to school. Because typically students are the freshest for the first hour to hour and a half. That's why we always do the reading block and English language arts and math in the morning, to get the ones that the kids are having the most to catch up on or to make gains in the morning. So late buses, tardiness, absenteeism, those things have got to change. And too many times we've had the situation where if the child is late, they just stayed home the whole day rather than going in late. That can't happen. We need every student in place every day for all the things that we could give them. There's just so much good in this school district and so many good things that have happened. I've touched on some of the things previously. Again, I go back in my career in special education, and I talked to some people the other night, and I says, do you even know about the Snoozland, what it is? That we have a Snoozland Center at Escambia Westgate, which is our center for severely handicapped students. And it is the premier Snoozland Center in the Western Hemisphere, not just in Western Florida or in the Western Hemisphere. And it was a partnership between the school district, the county, and the public. Judge Lacey Collier headed up the funding from the public aspect of it. And it cost $1.5 million. But the changes that it makes in a child's life are priceless. The changes. I've talked about one little 6-year-old girl who she entered school and she was diagnosed as severely mentally handicapped, cortical blindness. She was non-ambulatory and she was tube fed. Okay, basically she didn't do anything for herself. And after 6 months in this sensory environment, with people working with her to limit sensory input and to fine tune it, so to speak, she was reaching out. So you knew then she wasn't blind. She was feeding herself. She was holding on to stuff, and she was pulling herself up to stand. And that, in a 6-month period, is monumental, because then this is a child who's going to have some sense of independence and an ability to go on. These are the good things that happen in this community that people don't know about, and if they do, they don't share, and you're not taking the pride that you should. I go back and, the first time I ran, and I had said, and they're really the same things I still want to work on now. I want to make sure that our students are safe. I want to see the achievement gap gone. And I want to also to be able to recruit and retain the highest caliber workforce. We get good people, and typically they stay with us. It's not because we have the highest pay. It's because they get a sense of family and community once they come into the schools. And that's the kind of things that you can't get anywhere else. The love for the student and those things. But going back to, in the special ed environment, we sometimes have a situation where there's hostility. And I always told my my teachers. I said, if a parent comes in and they're chewing on you, let them chew, because they're going to have a situation at home for all the hours that the kid's away from school. And if this is a child that has behavior problems or learning problems or something that's really severe and hard to deal with, they need to be able to vent somewhere other than at home on the child and their spouse. Because the divorce rate in the parents of handicapped students is one of the highest there is. It's hard to do that, hard to deal with and deal in 24/7, not just the time that we have in school. So let them chew on us, and we'll take care of each other afterwards. But those parents need to have that support and need to have that nurturing. And that's what this district has been about in all the situations that I've known and that I've seen. At this point, you know, other things keep getting said about things that we need to do differently, things that this needs to happen. And the thing that we also need to remember is there is a finite amount of funding that comes in. People hear amounts of money that is in the budget, and they don't understand that completely. This school year, the budget's $810 million. And you sit there and say, wow. But what you need to understand too is 3/5 of that is categorical. That money is already funneled to things that it has to take care of. It's going to go into textbooks. It's going to go into property insurance. It's going to go into food services. It's going to go into transportation. That's already taken away. Of the 2/5 that's left, 82% of that goes into salaries and benefits. So that doesn't leave this huge amount of money that people think that there is in stuff that is considered discretionary. And believe me, the district's doing everything it can to legally and rightfully provide every service to every child. All of our funding, all of our budget work is as transparent as you could find. It's all published. You don't even have to go to a school board meeting. You could log on and look at the school board and school district websites, and you could bring up all the budget sheets and see where it's going, down to the penny. Because one of the most regulated things that there is school finance. We had a chief financial officer, rest her soul, Barbara Linker, and she was a smart lady, very intelligent. But she explained she was one of those people that they didn't just do their job, but they told everybody why they're doing the things they do. So the understanding of where the resources and finances and how they work, and some of the, not barriers, but the things that are in place to protect that there's nothing that's wrong going on with those funds are in place. Down to the idea of how they must use money that is going to be put into a savings so that it gets the most amount of interest earned to come back into the schools and into the students. Every single penny of it goes there. I've said before, and I'm going to say it again, one of the best things that would ever happen in the school district was the half-cent sales tax. The half-penny sales tax has been in place in Escambia County schools since 1998. In that time, it's about $400 million, but it's built the new schools. It built, not Helen Cairo, but Blue Angel. It's built Beulah Middle, the Kingsfield Elementary, Global Learning, the new Pleasant Grove Elementary School will be paid for, the new Myrtle Grove Elementary School, and all these other construction processes are things that need to happen with roofing, HVAC, flooring, windows, all the money that has to be spent that we could save if we have a more, what do I say, if the facility is insulated and it's up to standards in terms of that energy savings. We save that money. Every bit of money that's saved in energy goes back directly to the school. These things continue to go on. People need to know and be aware that there's no one out there squandering the money. The people in charge of finance are very good stewards of what's happening here. and we need to be happy for that. But we do need to keep watching. The half-cent sales tax still has in place the half-cent sales tax watchdog committee. So there's a group of individuals, not school district employees, people who volunteer their time from all different categories. There are bankers, there are financial experts, there are construction people, there are military people, real estate people on this committee that looks at every project where that money is spent, and not 1 cent of it goes into a building that doesn't house children. So if it comes up again in 5 years or something, please vote for that, because it's worth it, and it's money that's keeping our schools where they need to be in the capital improvements, facilities, and maintenance department, because the state stopped funding capital dollars to the traditional public schools back around 2005. Okay, now they still fund capital money to the charter schools, but that's a whole different thing, and I don't want to get into that, because we do have some good charter schools in Escambia County, and we want to make sure that they stay operating too. I just want people to know that if they have a question, if there's something that somebody says this doesn't look right, doesn't feel right, and they're hearing something that's not truthful or sounds like it could be, all you have to do is call. Every one of the school board members has their number published and is part of the website for the school district. I will take a call from anybody in the community. They don't have to live in District 2. If you live in Escambia County, you need to get the information, and you get to call whomever you want. So all 5 school board members are available. But I want to tell you that if you have a question, you hear something, you think that this is going on, feel free to give me a call. I think one of the other things that I do want to talk about too, because it goes back a little bit to the behavior stuff. The school district of Escambia County implemented PBIS, Positive Behavior Instructional Support System. And they did that and started it mainly with a handful of schools probably 10 years ago. But it has grown to the point where awards have been given out from the state for the work that's being done in our schools. There's a lot of talk about bullying, okay? And there are things in place that if a child is truly being bullied, anonymously, a parent, a guardian, a friend can report that, and it is investigated. Once a name is turned in, something submitted on the website, and it's there on the school district, on the website it talks about report bullying. You click on that, you could feed in the information, and there is a paper trail to show everything that's going to happen with that. We don't tolerate bullying, and we work with all the guidelines in the state to make sure that we won't have bullies in our schools. But PBIS has helped to make the students involved in their own behaviors. They're earning, they see what they need to do. They have the opportunity to be recognized for good behavior, not just singled out for bad behavior. And it's been a very good thing that's gone on and has worked very well. With behavior, it makes me think too, there are people, especially after Uvalde, Texas, there was a lot of questions about what's going on with security at the schools. Well, our schools have security people. We have guardians at the elementary schools, resource officers at middle and high school. We continue to increase the number of guardians we have available, and these guardians are trained through the sheriff's department according to the state guidelines so that they have the skills and the abilities that any other officer would have. They don't have the ability to arrest, and they don't need to have that at this point, especially at the elementary school, in my opinion. But the hardening of our schools to make sure safety is a priority started back in 2001 after the Twin Towers. Then Superintendent Jim Paul said, if we're not doing things to make sure our kids are safe, we're going to be sorry, because we're the place that trains the pilots that's bombing the terrorists. And they would probably take the opportunity to get back at us in our most vulnerable situation, and that would be our kids. We don't want that to happen. We've worked at doing fencing, the monitors, cameras everywhere, upgraded every time they come in. And this was long before anything was mandated by the state. Beginning back in 2001, 2002, this school district has allotted at least $250,000 a year for that to go on. Every new construction project brings those schools, the new ones, up to the highest standards. And when there's renovation, we raise that to the highest standards. Single point of access, gates that are closed, training to the staff, on and on and on. The safety of our students is the utmost importance to us. So I thank you for your time. Again, if you ever have a question, feel free to call me. I'll give you my number here, 850-292-0528. But every other board member is available to answer questions. And if we don't have the questions, we know which staff members to get in touch with to give you factual, honest information. Thank you.